Welcome back to the closing table. Our guest today is a proven strategist known for turning marketing obstacles into massive opportunities. He is Kyle Rutledge, founder of Gridari. For years, Kyle saw companies drowning in low-quality leads and wasting ad budgets. He solved this by taking the end-to-end tracking and enterprise strategies previously locked behind massive budgets and simplifying them for businesses of all sizes. As the former top digital strategist at Disruptive Advertising, ranked the #1 digital marketing agency in the United States by Clutch, he has a track record of scaling smarter. His work includes helping an acquisition, a portfolio company cut their cost per sales quality leads by 75%. He's here to show us to stop running campaigns and start building systems that transform your business. Please join me in welcoming Kyle Rutledge. Hey, Kyle, how are we doing today?
Doing awesome. Happy to be here. Thanks, Adam.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So I hope I did a good job introducing you to the podcast. Would you like to say a couple of words for yourself, maybe fill in some gaps that I potentially may have missed?
No, that was a great introduction. As you mentioned, I kind of have my focus in my agency and what I do, helping businesses get higher quality leads from their paid ads. With lead generation in advertising, the #1 problem that you'll hear is like, hey, the quality of lead sucks, right? It's a problem that most marketers and most small business owners specifically, or large business owners have with paid advertising. And so there are smarter ways of going about it. And unfortunately, very few marketers and agencies are actually implementing these systems nowadays. So that's what I'm here to solve.
Okay, very good. So let's go back a little bit. How was it when you first got into the space? What was the catalyst in which, drove you to launch this business and make your focus around that all the way through to, where you're at now?
Yeah, for sure. So I kind of started focusing on that. I got into marketing in general with video production and video editing in 2012. And then I got more into the digital side of things in 2016, and I started specializing in paid advertising in 2018. That's when I started working at a marketing agency called Disruptive Advertising, where I worked for a number of years through 2023. And that's where I became that #1 strategist. Disruptive was the #1 digital marketing agency in the US between 21 and 24. The first few years at Disruptive Advertising were where I really identified this problem, because time and time again, I'd hop on client calls and be like, guys, we're killing it. Results are awesome in the accounts. Like, we're getting so many leads. Aren't you so excited? And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, we've got nothing. Like, we've closed no deals. All the leads are crap. And so there was just this disconnect between us and them. And that happened time and time again, where it's like, I'm doing the right things. The numbers are great. The dashboards look pretty because the numbers have gone up, but it didn't translate to business results. And so that dug into this journey of trying to figure out, how can we tie in closer to real business outcomes with what's happening in the ad platforms? And so that's kind of the start of the journey there.
That's interesting you bring that up, because I also have been in that situation too. And sometimes, you always focus on the marketing capacity, what channels are we using and all that, but you really don't have much control over the actual sales team that's going to be utilizing these leads and what that process looks like. So do you see that kind of, I don't want to call it a problem, but it really is. You can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make them drink it, type deal. So how do you overcome that element of it, which is equally as important to getting the leads, in my opinion?
Yeah. A lot of times when marketers face this situation, they kind of default to like, hey, marketing's my realm, generating leads is my realm. Your realm, sales team, is to close these leads. And that's where a lot of the fights between marketing and sales start from, right? And so sales will always come back and be like, I can't close the lead if I can't contact them, or if this is a spam, irrelevant, whatever the case may be. And so you kind of just have to step back and diagnose, like, what is the problem? Is it that, we're getting qualified individuals, they're asking the right questions, but they can't close them? That's a sales problem. Or is it that we just can't contact them, or like they're totally unqualified tire kickers? Like, there is a lot more that marketers can do to improve the leads that we're generating through our advertising. And that's where I've focused my efforts, because a lot of marketers just want to say like, hey, it is what it is. And like, there's nothing we can do about it. And I am pushing back on that and saying, yes, there are things that we can.
So as far as your focus, are there any specific channels that you work with primarily, or are you more of like an omni-channel approach type guy?
Yeah. So the core three lead generation advertising platforms are Google, Meta, LinkedIn. Those are the three primary channels that I work with. And in terms of optimizing for higher quality leads, that's better to do best to worst. Google is the easiest, the best. Like you can give them fewer data signals and they'll be able to optimize better. Meta is next best. And then LinkedIn, you don't often see huge quality issues with LinkedIn because they have such robust targeting. But in terms of like feeding data back to the platform and optimizing for higher quality leads, they're lacking a little bit in that regard. But yes, we can do this on all three of those channels.
Would you recommend most businesses kind of deploy across all three? Or are there certain scenarios in which they should just focus on one, allocate the budget evenly? Where is that process around decision making for that made?
Yeah, the decision making in terms of like which channels do we advertise on, that comes back to Eugene Schwartz, 5 stages of awareness. Are you familiar with this framework there?
I'm not. Please enlighten me.
Okay. So he wrote a book called Breakthrough Advertising. I think it was in like the 50s or 60s. So it's an older book. And if you get an original copy, they're worth hundreds of dollars. So like if you have one, I'd love to hear from you. But he talks about, and like this has been replicated many different ways, but people, any potential customers go through this stage of like, at some point they're unaware that they even have a problem, right? And then they become aware of the problem that they face, but they're unaware of the solution. So that's step 2. They're problem aware. And then they become aware that, hey, there's actually a solution to this problem in general, but they're not, they don't know the specifics of what that solution might look like. And so that's solution aware. They're aware that there is a solution. And then they become product aware. So it's like, oh, okay, now I have these products that can help me solve this problem that I'm facing. And so those are the 4. And then the 5th is most aware. That's where people they've probably tried multiple things to overcome this problem in the past, and it may or may not have worked, but they're very aware and in depth with the solutions and know a lot about it. And so when it comes to choosing where you want to be advertising and marketing, if you're trying to get in front of somebody who is unaware or problem aware, but they don't know what solutions are out there, they're probably not searching on Google. They may be typing something into like a ChatGPT and LLM, but for the most part, they're not on a search-based platform. So Google Ads probably isn't your channel unless you're using Google Ads to run image display ads or some sort of YouTube placements. You're better probably served on a social channel where you can get in front of people and have a message like, hey, are you curious about like, have you seen this issue on your foot? Or like, does your, my wife, she yawns and her jaw pops, right? And so like there was an ad I saw, it's like, your jaw shouldn't be popping. And so that's kind of like the curiosity piece. It's like, if people are unaware that this is even a problem, you're trying to pique their curiosity and like, is this a problem? Like, yeah, I guess it is. And so anyways, those first 2 stages are really good for social platforms. And then later, as you get further down, people are probably searching out a solution or searching out specific solutions. And that's where you can get in front of them on more of a search-based platform. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. I'm trying to speak on behalf of those that don't understand that as far as how do you know where they are in that spectrum, the audience?
You should have somewhat of an intuitive feel if you're talking to your customers. What I like to do is talk with any clients that I bring on. I like to ask, can you bring on your top salesperson? Can I ask them some questions and try and dig into like, where are people in that stage of awareness? A lot of times just thinking through that, most brand owners and marketers should be able to pinpoint, like, I think they're somewhere around here, but you might have different segments of types of customers that are more or less aware. And so there's more we can get into in terms of like, who's your ideal client? Because honestly, a lot of businesses serve multiple types of clients. And so you can also do some sort of segmentation of like, which clients are our best clients and what are the similarities and correlations that they have? How aware were they, when reaching out to us and things like that. So, yeah, there's a lot we can dig into.
Yeah, for sure. I knew that was a loaded question for you, but it really just shows the importance of really understanding your target audience.
Yeah.
Seems like, everything really just originates from there. Your strategy, your execution on it, originates from that. So really understanding that, and I'd go even further in understanding what your competitors are doing as well to make
Hmm.
sure, at least from an awareness standpoint, understanding where your offer is uh, fits with the marketplace.
Yeah.
Totally get that, element of it. So you mentioned probably the biggest buzzword nowadays is AI.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to where you are with the use of AI. Have you implemented it into your workflow, with your client's workflow? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the biggest use case that I have for AI right now is in qualifying like inbound calls that come in from our ads. So I've implemented this with a number of clients at this point, but for every inbound call that comes from our ads, and you can do this with other sources as well, but what we're using it for is we get all those calls and we have AI transcribe the calls and then analyze that transcription and bucket it into, like, we have a lot of different categories, but they fall into one of three main buckets. Are they totally irrelevant? Wrong call, or, like wrong number, tire kicker, or like we've had calls where it's like, hey, I'm just trying to get a hold of this employee. Like, I don't know if he forgot his lunch. His phone's not, they're not answering their phone. Totally irrelevant. Second category is like, this is the right type of person we want calling, but for whatever reason, they didn't book that next meeting. They didn't book that appointment. Maybe they need to, do whatever. There's some obstacle from getting them, but it's the right type of person we want to be advertising to and talking to. And then the third category is the best. And that's the type of person, like, hey, they're the right type of person. And they scheduled that next event. They booked that appointment, whatever it is. And so with the AI, we're bucketing those people based on the call transcripts and assigning a tag. And then if they're that qualified and booked an appointment type category, we push them back into Google Ads, into Facebook or wherever, and we give them a really high conversion value, right? This is very valuable to us. That middle bucket, we also push back as a conversion and say, hey, optimize towards these people as well. But the conversion value is a little bit lower because, it's good, but they didn't take that action. And then that first bucket of totally unqualified, we just don't push those back into the ad platforms. And it's through this mechanism that we're able to optimize towards qualified callers, not just anybody willing to call us. If you talk to any PI, personal injury lawyer, they'll be the first ones to tell you that, like, just because somebody called you doesn't mean it's a good lead. Just because they talked to you but for 15 minutes trying to prove to you that they had a good case doesn't mean that they're a good lead, right? And so you want some sort of qualification coming through on, like, these are good, these are not. And so we've been using AI for that, which has been super effective.
Got you. And then at what point does it come out of the advertising ecosystem and then into the sales team's responsibility ultimately? I would imagine once it reaches that third bucket, the retargeting really isn't as necessary because you already have a proven state of that prospect to show legitimate interest into whatever product or service that the business is selling. So when you move them back into it, does that require like a specific how do I best articulate this? Does it require like its own unique bucket or ad configuration for that then the ad will learn to look for those similar type of people? How does that work itself out? Is that a manual lift? Is that something that you use AI to help kind of diagnose and label these
Yeah.
types?
Yeah. So whenever I'm building these types of systems for sales and marketing teams, I never try and add any additional manual steps that the sales team has to implement or do in order to get this working. I want to integrate with their existing setup. Maybe there's one or two tweaks that we need to make, but a lot of times it's just building some sort of automations. And so how this works is, in terms of the call, that's all happening based on the call outcomes, and that's just being triggered back based on how the call turned out. For leads or for later stages after that call has happened, we're tracking through their CRM. And as people move from, a lead to a marketing qualified lead, a sales qualified lead, an opportunity at each of those stages, and I'll use the case for Google here. We're pulling the information about that person and some unique identifier and pushing it back into the ad platform. And we're telling Google, hey, Google, these people that are firing this conversion action, which correlate to the stage they're getting to, these people are the people we care about. And in Google, you can optimize your conversion actions and say, hey, this one's primary, this one's secondary. Anything that's primary, you're teaching and informing Google, this is what we care about, optimized towards more actions like this. So as Google gets more and more data about who's making it to these later stages, if you have those set to primary, it's going to try and find those similarities between them. The cluster analysis of like, what's similar between these people versus other people? And then it's naturally going to use its AI and machine learning to optimize your bids towards more people like similar to them that are more likely to be qualified leads and get to those later stages in your sales process.
Makes total sense. So I'll go out on a limb. Those clients that have implemented this type of system, I'm sure they're pretty happy. True or not true? Pretty true.
Very true, yeah.
I figured as much. True or not true that by doing so, they were able to reduce their CPA. I'd go out and as far as say the life cycle or the sales cycle from prospect to client has shortened, and their budget has probably decreased as well because you've removed a lot of excess, not usable information from the equation right out the gate. And especially as the platform learns, it gets better and better and better. Would you agree with that?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So to answer the question, true. Yes, that does happen. Sometimes the business chooses like, hey, we're just like, what this is helping you figure out is like any advertiser traditionally would say, I know half of my advertising is working. I don't know which half, right? This is helping to identify which half of your advertising is working. One of our clients, they had a really cheap cost per lead. But when we looked at the further stages, that had a really, really low close rate at the end of the day. And so the acquisition cost was really high. And so it just made the decision really obvious. We need to pull from here. There's this other campaign that has a higher cost per lead, but they're closing at like way higher rates, 70% instead of 30%. And so let's pull the budget from here and push it over there. And that's like a perfect example of like, okay, we're just going to be closing more now because the leads coming through this campaign are higher quality for any number of reasons. And so sometimes they're reinvesting that budget just into growing the business faster. Other times, like one of the biggest case studies I was working with a life insurance related business, and they were spending $1.8 million a month on ads. We implemented this type of system, and with that budget, overwhelmed their sales team. And their sales staff aren't the type of staff you can just hire somebody else immediately. And so they were forced to pull their budgets back from 1.8 million a month down to 500 a month because they just couldn't keep up with all the qualified leads.
Some people would say that's a good problem to have, but
yeah,
it does get problematic if you have too much incoming bona fide leads that you can't address. Eventually, you just start to hurt the brand identity because you're not able to serve everybody. So you have to be aware. Now, what about like time frames to be able to see these type of results? Is it almost immediate? Is it you got to let Google crawl, do its thing for a month? If you're painting a picture for a client, what kind of expectations do you provide?
Yeah, timelines and expectations, a big topic. Most of our clients will get the system built and operational within 2 to 3 weeks. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. That's most of the time when there is configuration we need to do with the CRM. There are, roadblocks in getting that situation figured out. But yeah, most of the time within the first month, we have the system set up, implemented, and starting to optimize towards, or starting to gather data on the qualified leads. Kind of the second set of 2 to 4 weeks kind of depends on your sales cycle. How long does it take to get a lead to a qualified lead opportunity closed deal? Because you need to start gathering that benchmark data and figure out, what's working, what's not. Once you're getting, so the data point for Google is 15 qualified conversions, whatever you want to optimize towards, 15 conversions of whatever you want to optimize towards per month per campaign. Once you've had that much data for the stage you want to optimize towards, you should be able to make that switch and start optimizing towards that higher qualified type of lead and see some good results within the next 2 to 4 weeks. So adding all those timelines up, probably within 2 to 3 months, you should be starting to see some positive impact.
For sure. And I know there's a ton of other variables that factor into that, the size of the business and how much red tape you have to get around and all the fun stuff
Correct.
of implementing and, working with whatever systems they have in place. So I get it. What size businesses do you typically work?
Yeah, most of the businesses that I work with are over $1 million in revenue. So that's typically the smallest size business. A lot of them are between 10 and 20. Once businesses are getting to the 20 to 30 million mark, a lot of times they're trying to uh, bring marketing resources in-house, own a lot more of those processes. I have worked with a number of those clients still. Not every company wants to pull everything in-house. And sometimes they just want to work with someone like me that has the knowledge and experience of implementing it. And they want the coaching and the mentorship. And so I've done that from time to time as well. And then there's the exception of that one very large insurance company that they were doing hundreds of millions a year. I didn't get full transparency into their total revenue numbers, but they were doing hundreds of millions at least. And they had one marketer and just hired multiple agencies in their respective fields. So that was a very interesting company to work with.
Got it. And with this landscape that's constantly evolving and changing with, it seems like every day there's some new tech that just blows out the previous. So it's like right when you figure out, what's working for you, it's like, all right, let's get back to the drawing board. Now there's something more and better. Where do you see the average business right now as far as adopting and utilizing these new technologies, whether it be a form of AI or an automation? Is there still some reluctancy? What's your take on that? What's your pulse on where businesses are at and their comfortability level with it?
Yeah. Overall, I've seen companies really fall behind here. Like just this offline conversion tracking, optimizing for qualified leads. I've been doing this type of setup since 2018. We're going into 2026 now. And I've started tracking data on the accounts that I audit, accounts that I see over the last, let's say, a year and a half. I've looked at and audited over 120 ad accounts. Only one account had this set up. And they were actually another marketing agency, and I was just helping them with their client acquisition. So there's a lot of opportunity, not even just with AI, but some of these more, uh, I guess you could say it's an advanced tracking setup. I'm still not seeing many advertisers and lead generation businesses implementing some of these systems that have been around for almost a decade, or probably more than a decade. 2018 is just when I learned about it. And it's getting easier and easier to implement. There are more CRMs with native integrations too. AI should be able to help with that. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity on the table still.
Gotcha. All right. So let's speak a little bit about where you see this arena going, this environment of, people from the full spectrum of people that don't know AI, don't care to know AI, or how it can help them, through the people that are highly interested, certainly qualified, but they don't know where to begin. What would you say to them is the best way to change that methodology or, thinking about it, and to adopt more of a more optimistic approach and thinking to ultimately go forward with implementing some of these new technologies into their business workflow, whether it be just from an operational standpoint, like internally, all the way through ads and incoming and outbound leads and prospecting?
Yeah. Well, I feel like the base level is just familiarizing yourselves with LLMs, your ChatGPT, your Gemini, and like at a most basic level, if you're not on there yet, I feel like that's a missed opportunity. I feel like, well, with my business, with my clients, that's been huge for us in terms of generating ad copy and in terms of generating ideas and just knowledge and learning. The other night, I was just washing the dishes and I was having a conversation with ChatGPT about LinkedIn ad campaigns, and I was learning and coming up with ideas and figuring out a lot of stuff. So it's like, there's a lot of capabilities just with those resources. Now, on top of that, there are things like AI ad creation, right? I think that that's going to be one of the next big waves. I'm already seeing some people generating more on the social platforms, some AI generated content. I'm going to be experimenting that for myself and for some of my clients here shortly. And I am curious to see how that changes the playing field in terms of social media marketing from an ads perspective, or even just an organic perspective. And there's probably a few other things not coming top of mind right now, but I'd say at a basic level, LLMs, your ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and I think the creative side is coming up pretty quick.
And when you say these new ads, is there a specific type of ad that you think, generally speaking, forms better, whether it be a video or a display versus a static image versus a search? Would you lean towards a specific type of ad over another, in your opinion?
Yeah. In general, I would lean more towards video. Video tends to just be more engaging. I have seen some image ads perform better than video assets, but by and large, videos do produce better results. There's also some stuff you can test out, like carousels on social media have been doing really well recently. And so, the slideshows of images and things like that. When it comes to LinkedIn content, I had mentioned that conversation I was having with ChatGPT. A lot of that was in regards to what I'm seeing a lot of more B2B buyers resonating with and engaging with is that middle of funnel type offer. You're not requesting a demo, you're giving them some valuable resource. A lot of those resources can be built, designed, and created through these AI systems. And so you can generate a large variety and breadth of different types of content to test and figure out what your market resonates with. And so, even in terms of not necessarily the ad creative itself, but the offer you're providing people, whether that's a white paper or a video to watch or something along those lines.
Okay, perfect. And then these are a lot of great insights that I know the audience will love to, just as far as you mentioned for the campaigns, so you have people or companies that are running campaigns, and then you have companies that are building systems for their campaigns. Briefly, tell me the importance, now, especially nowadays, of the importance of building and maybe rewiring how you analyze the efficiency and the performance of your campaigns versus those that operate on a set and forget, maybe spray and pray type mentality. Talk a little bit about the vast difference between the two and the importance behind building an actual system versus just running ads.
Yeah. Most of the times when I implement this specific system that I've been talking about of optimizing towards qualified leads, we're seeing oftentimes a cost reduction in terms of qualified leads coming through, sometimes 50% reduction in qualified leads, right? So a significant change. And I've seen that across all sorts of industries, home services, B2B, SaaS. So independent of industry, we see these types of results coming through. But like one of the hard parts is once you get it set up, you kind of have to reestablish a baseline because you didn't know what your cost per qualified lead was before. And so you're establishing that baseline as you're simultaneously watching it improve. And so the numbers can kind of get fuzzy there. In terms of a set and forget or an ongoing like optimization and management, just a quick example here. Google Ads, there's something called a quality score. And so the keywords that you're bidding on, you're scored from a 1 to 10 in terms of how good are your ads, right? Most companies when I get in and audit their accounts, their quality scores are somewhere between like a 2 to a 5, right? Not very high on that rating. When you go through and actually optimize an account, a lot of times you can get that from a 5 to an 8. it's within reason that you should be able to see that. Maybe a 4 to an 8. Sometimes there's things out of your control. But what we've seen is that for 1 point, we've been tracking data on this. For 1 point improvement to your quality score through the ongoing optimization, structuring the account the right way, building things to best practice, you see a 20% reduction in your cost per click from a 1 point improvement to your quality score, right? So that's huge, right?
Massive.
So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity that's left on the table.
So if you're a founder that maybe is listening here, what's like the one non-negotiable thing that they need to embrace head on right now, whether it be to educate themselves or to implement in their systems that will help take their business from its current state? And let's just assume they want to go up to their aspirations or to reach an enterprise level. What would be that one non-negotiable thing that they should do right now?
Yeah, the one non-negotiable would be that tracking, that advanced tracking to optimize towards qualified leads. That one change is the biggest evolution to your ad campaigns that you will see. It affects everything, right? And yes, there are other things that like optimizing and getting things to best practices and things like that. But if there was just one thing, it would be optimizing towards qualified leads, not just anybody willing to fill out a form or give you a phone call. That'll revolutionize any ad account.
That makes total sense. Well, Kyle, as we approach the conclusion of this podcast, I want to give you the ability to plug yourself, if you will, and your company. If there's anybody watching that wants to engage with Kyle or utilize any of his services, Kyle, feel free to let them know how to find you.
Perfect. Yeah, pretty active on LinkedIn. So Kyle Rutledge on LinkedIn. You should be able to find me, owner of Gridari. I also have a YouTube channel that I've been starting to get a little bit more active on. This week, I'm publishing a video that is for that marketing leader, business owner who is responsible for Google Ads, but doesn't know the technical aspects of it. And they don't know if that marketer or agency that they've hired is actually doing a good job. So it's a quick 14-minute, 7-point checklist in here's how you can go into your ad account, see if it's optimized well, and know if that person that's managing your account is doing a good job or not. So I think that will be a valuable resource for these marketing leaders and business owners.
Absolutely. I'll be watching too, Kyle. And on that note, I just want to thank you again, Kyle, for your time, for your insights, your knowledge, and your expertise as a leader in this space. Good luck with everything and all your new testing that you're doing. Looking forward to seeing all your future results. You certainly set the bar high and hope to speak with you soon to hear all about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate you having me.
You got it, Kyle.
1,